All right, the beat goes on and on in Chicago, specifically when it comes to Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, who the starting quarterback is going to be. We will break this down and many other things with NFL reporter Cameron Wolfe. He's with the NFL Network. You can follow him on Twitter at Cameron Wolfe. You can see him. You can see him a lot. He's part of NFL Game Day, also a part of NFL Now. Check that out. So, Cameron, if you look at it, and you look at the situation in Chicago, Andy Dalton, a lot of fans there haven't wanted him to be the starter from day one. What do you think? Where do you think the Bears will go from here? Because when Justin Fields got in there, he looked all right, but you still, I would think, as a fan, say Fields over Dalton. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I was watching that clip of Matt Nagy, and I couldn't help. Like, I've watched a lot of these press conferences in my day. That looked like a coach that's trying his best to stop all the traffic, the Justin Field traffic, but he knows what's going on behind the scenes. Like, to me, I think it's only a matter of time when it's Justin Fields' time. Whatever that mark is in his mind, whether it's a certain amount of losses or a certain amount of time, I'm here in Miami. I saw it last year with Tua and Fitz. There was a certain amount of time that goes by when you're like, hey, I got to see the first round pick. He was drafted to be the guy for a reason. So I think we're all kind of getting dragged along with the fray. We're waiting to see when they make that decision. Andy Dalton isn't the answer here, and I don't think they're a playoff team, regardless. So it might as well start the timetable with Justin Fields. I don't really know why Matt Nagy's playing all these games.
Might be that Kansas City influence just too much in his head, how it worked out with Mahomes and Alex Smith. Maybe. But you mentioned, Cameron, your time in Miami watching the Tua and Fitz situation play out last year. We didn't really talk about this yesterday. I'd love to know, obviously Tua's nursing, I believe it's bruised ribs, if I'm not mistaken. I'd love to know how the Dolphins collectively are licking their wounds after getting beat down by the Bills, especially with this being such a major season for this franchise, which thinks it's a playoff team, which thinks it's a seasoned quarterback away. Could that be Tua? Could that be a certain somebody who's not playing in Houston? Just like, what is the vibe in Miami after beating the big bad Patriots in week one and then getting the brakes beat off them in week two? And your quarterback.
It's sad days. Yeah, it's sad days in Miami. If you don't know if you could be sad in Miami, you got to watch the Dolphins this week. They're proving that you can find a way to be sad in the city of Miami. It's funny, I asked Xavier Howard, who's their best player, the only guy who's really playing good so far this season, how the mood was in the locker room, because we don't get to go in there anymore. He just simply said, like a funeral. And I'm like, okay, I can picture that. I think this is the team, the Bills, who had their number. They beat them the last 6 times. The Bills have beat the Dolphins. And, we talk so much about the Patriots being this leader of the AFC East for so long. It's the Bills now. The Bills are the team that beat in that division. And the Dolphins keep getting their butt handed to them every time they play them. So it's not a good feeling. There's a lot of questions there, whether it's around Tua, whether it's around the offensive line, whether it's around, like you were talking about, they've spent 2 years rebuilding. This was supposed to be the year, and they getting smacked 35-0 against another AFC team. So there's a lot of people who were looking in the mirror and got to realize, like, what do we have to do for this to be different? I think this is a coming home, week for the Dolphins. We're going to see exactly who they are coming up this week against the Raiders.
Yeah.
What do they have to do? I would say, you know what, Mike and Cameron, what do they have to do? I'd say maybe acquire Deshaun Watson. Is that realistic? Do you think the Dolphins, Cameron, are really in that mix? And if so, what would they be comfortable trading for Deshaun Watson? Comfortable and realistic trading for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think they're definitely in the mix, definitely listening. I think when you look at the Dolphins, they're in a weird spot because they drafted Tua in the first round last year, and they're trying to do everything they can to give him an opportunity. But I think you have a owner in Stephen Ross who's 80 plus years old, who wants to win now, who said, hey, we've done the rebuilding thing for 2 years. I'm not trying to wait any longer. And you've got a GM and head coach duo who, by the way, are black, which means they know that the rope is only so long. They want to win as well. So it's how much patience do you give for this young quarterback to succeed versus going to get the now the now product in Deshaun Watson. So I think they've definitely been calling. I think they've definitely been listening. Like you mentioned, it's the price. You can't mention Watson without mentioning the legal cases that go along with it. So I think the Dolphins would probably want some sort of assurances that if something went left or something went right with Deshaun's legal cases, they would be able to get some pick protections or not give up as many picks. So I think that's probably a big part of the situation. I don't know that Deshaun gets traded this season. To me, that seems more like a 2022 offseason deal. But if Tua doesn't play better than he has so far, the Dolphins are absolutely going to be at the front of that line because they're not going to wait a third year to see if Tua is going to be the guy.
And on the flip side, I love to kind of get your thoughts. I'm gonna sneak in a 2-for-1 here, Cameron. Just as like checking all the boxes in the AFC East while we're on the subject of the Dolphins, and we covered the Bills here. The Patriots so far so solid with Mac Jones, it seems like. Whereas poor Zach Wilson's, first losing to his predecessor in week 1 and then getting booed in his home opener in week 2, throwing 4 interceptions. I'd love to know just your assessment of and your insight into where both these franchises are, as unlike the Bills and Dolphins, who had incumbent quarterbacks, both these franchises breaking in rookie quarterbacks to much different results so far. What's your assessment of where the Jets and Patriots are in these transition years?
Yeah, let me start with the Jets because, man, that franchise has been through a lot. You went through the Adam Gase era last year, and everybody was so excited to get rid of him. Like everything was going to be so bright and glossy on the other side of it, and it hasn't been. You look at the Jet situation, right? They had the number 2 pick, and they picked Zach Wilson, and they got rid of Sam Darnold. And you look across the street in Carolina, and Sam Darnold's 2-0, and the Panthers are looking good. Darnold's looking good. They passed on Mac Jones, who is looking pretty decent with the Patriots. And their quarterback is looking a lot like Darnold did, throwing a lot of interceptions. So at some point, you got to realize maybe it's the franchise and not the player. So I think the Jets, that would be a hard team for me to kind of look at and say that there's a lot of promise there, because I think Zach Wilson will be better, but there's a lot of issues on that team. There's a lot of holes on that team. Whereas the Patriots, that franchise already has an elite defense. So for Mac Jones, perfect fit for him coming from Alabama, where they've always had that elite defenses. I've watched him play the last couple of weeks, and what stands out to me is that he's at his best as being a game manager. And I know you don't necessarily want your first round pick to be that, but he hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns, but he hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions. He's stuck in the pocket, made throws when he needs to make throws, and just kind of kept them in a lot of games and allowed their defense and other playmakers to win. So he's in a more advantageous situation than Zach Wilson, who has to be Superman every day. So I think that's kind of the state of both franchises. You have a franchise in the Patriots who are right on the cusp of contention, and the Jets who are far, far away. So I think you look at that AFC East, and it's definitely a class of the rich and poor. You got the Bills at the very top, the Dolphins and Patriots in the middle, and then the Jets way at the bottom.
Last thing before we let you go, man, indulge me here. Just indulge me. It's only 2 weeks in. Mm-hmm. This time last season, we were handing Russell Wilson his first MVP, his first MVP votes, and we know how the rest of the season played out. Would love to know, after 2 weeks, let's not even call it the most valuable player, because we got 15 more games now to figure that out. Your MIP, your most impressive individual player through 2 weeks so far this season, aka the MVP frontrunner, way too early out the blocks. Who you got? Most impressive player
give me Baby
so
Yoda, dog, in Arizona, Kyler Murray. I know he kind of got away with the win last week. In that game, they probably should have lost to Minnesota, but man, I got a chance to see him. I was out in Nashville week 1 covering that Titans-Cardinals game, and everybody expected that to be a shootout. You got all those receivers, Julio Jones, AJ Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, and only one team was shooting, and it was Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. And I was really impressed with Kyler. Like, every time I watch him, he looks like a video game. And he's just, scrambling around there. And I know we've kind of been mesmerized with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson over the last couple of years. But this is really a year for Kyler to kind of put his name and try to lift it to those guys as far as the next generation top quarterback. So I think that Kyler, to me, through 2 weeks, is the guy I would point to and say, he's the man everybody is chasing. And I think this Cardinals team has actually been one of the biggest surprises so far.
Yeah, if I still played Madden, I would not allow you to pick the Cardinals and Kyler Murray. That is cheating. Hey, Cameron Wolfe, we appreciate it, man. Keep up the great work on NFL Network, Game Day, and NFL Now. Love what you're doing, man. So come back and
Appreciate you,
kick with us
fellas.
again real soon, all right?
Oh yeah, we'll have to
All
do
right,
it
bro.
again.
Thanks for the knowledge.
All right, man.
All right, bro. Be good.
Thank you.